I'm making a game that's basically Pokemon, but with real-time battles instead of turn-based combat. You explore an open world with your monsters, catch whichever you find, and then level them up to get new abilities. And I want to show you how the game's development started about a year and a half ago, how it's going now, and by the way, I'm launching a Kickstarter super soon, so stay tuned for that later in the video, but I'm also going to let you know why I stopped working on the game for over a year, which almost led to its death. So the game started out as a simple prototype that combined the combat and exploration of the top-down Zelda games with the creature collecting of Pokemon. And at first, the game was progressing really well. I made this 15-minute demo in about a month and then released it to the public on Steam. And the reception was really good. The game got the most amount of wishlists in the first 24 hours out of any of the games that I've ever made before, and I felt like I knew where to take the game. But the more I worked on it beyond this 15-minute demo, the more I felt like I just couldn't see where it was going. It's almost as if when I was originally working on the game for the demo, I was kind of like on a ship with clear skies and everything was perfect. And then right after that, when I released it, everything became just super foggy. I couldn't see anything. I really didn't know where I was taking the project. Over the next few months, I was on and off with the game, making some areas here and there, working on some level design, maybe sometimes working on some core systems. But the problem was that no matter what, I just couldn't see the final version of the game in my head. And when I say that I couldn't see the final version of this game in my head, it's not that I couldn't visualize what a version of this game would look like, but rather it felt like the version that I could visualize felt like it was just not particularly fun. I'm not really quite sure how to explain it beyond that, but it felt like the concept worked for a 50-minute demo, but it was very obvious that expanding this in breadth would not result in the game being better. So the obvious solution would have been to just expand it in depth, right? Well, during this time period of trying to figure out what the game was, I was mostly working on one of my other games, Soulstalker. And during the development of that game, I would periodically go back to Synth Beasts and just really trying to figure out how to make it deeper without requiring me to throw away everything I had made so far, as well as keeping the scope manageable, because that was really important to me. So the months passed and I really never quite figured it out, and that was until Soulstalker, the previous game that I was talking about, released. And it released on Steam, Switch, PlayStation 4, PlayStation 5, Xbox One, Xbox Series X, and Xbox Series S, and this was on the 24th of October, so just a few months ago as of this video going live. And after spending a bit over a month or so fixing stuff related to the console port on that game, I had to find something else to put my focus on. And this is because I usually like to have 2 or 3 things going on at any given time so that whenever something is stumping me, like in this situation, I can go and work on something else while I both work on that and also think about how to figure out what is stumping me. Another benefit of this is that because I work with multiple team members for console porting, art, and music, having more stuff going at once means that there's much less downtime in regards to those things. So now that Soulstalker was released, the main things I had on my plate were the console ports of the Outbound Ghost, which is a game that I had just gotten back after a 2-year-long lawsuit, so that was its own thing, and I have videos on my channel about that. But apart from that, I also have a top secret project that I actually can't tell you about yet. So then those 2 things were what I had going on, but then I had one more, right? It was Synth Beasts, and working on that would have fit perfectly, but of course that's only if I could actually manage to figure out the design of the game. So the secret project that I've been working on is kind of similar to Synth Beasts in many ways, and working on that kind of untied some design knots I had in my head, and that allowed me to test out some stuff to see if it worked in the context of Synth Beasts. So before all of this, the way that the game worked was that you explored around the world, and whenever you defeated any enemy, you would then be able to capture them and use their abilities, right? So the Pokemon Cross Zelda gameplay. For instance, if you defeated this green little dragon, you could then use it to fire its projectile in combat, as well as using it for puzzles. But I think this concept fails both the Pokemon and the Zelda concepts in 2 key ways. Firstly, the game is not as fluid as Zelda because each character is suited for a specific use case, and so you end up having to switch between the characters a lot if you have puzzles with many moving parts, and so the puzzles can't really be as complex because otherwise they're not as fluid. Secondly, the RPG elements are not as interesting as Pokemon's because of course you can't level up. So I think what was happening in terms of my design block is that I couldn't fully resolve the fact that the Zelda puzzle gameplay and the Pokemon RPG gameplay were kind of at odds with each other. And again, it was my super secret project and some of the design work that I did for that one that helped me actually realize this. So what did I do? Well, in the end, I pivoted the game towards more RPG focused gameplay, and wow, I'm so happy I did, and you're just about to see why. This all happened about 2 months ago in November 2024, and ever since then, the game's total playtime went from about 20-25 minutes to now over 4 hours already, and the game is still a few months away from release. I also have tons of new systems like leveling, an open world you can explore with a boat, and way more, so let me take you through all of it. So the first thing I did was figure out how to make the game more explorable like a Metroidvania, but without having to spend the design bandwidth that it takes to make everything super interconnected in terms of the game's world's physical space. In the end, I landed on the game world being an archipelago of islands, and you can travel between them by boat, so very similar to The Legend of Zelda Wind Waker if you've ever played that. What this allows me to do is to give the player tons of choice and exploration. But again, as I said before, I don't need to micromanage every meter of space in the game world because the open world is abstracted. As well, each small island can be focused on exploring one key concept, like for instance, this island over here focuses on introducing this monster called Segavio, and its ability to use its wind attack to rotate these wind turbine doors and, do puzzles with them. Or another super cool example here is that there's an island focused entirely on a boss fight, and there's this really big air of mystery. Or finally, just for these examples, there's this other island that lets you race to get a reward, so there's tons of variety. After I had worked out this framework, the game felt way better to explore, but then I ran into another issue, which is that the game didn't feel like it was rewarding the players enough. Fortunately, because the game's design pivoted to being more RPG focused, I was not as held back trying to keep my gameplay pure, like Zelda. So the very first thing that I did was add a currency system, which of course Zelda also has, but you'll see how this is a bit more RPG-y. So basically now, whenever you break these boxes that are spread around the world, you can get the coins, and these coins can be used in shops. And of course, that meant that I had to make both a shop and an item system. So the shops can now be found in specific islands, and of course you can buy items, but what do the items actually do? Well, given that the game is more RPG focused now, they of course improve your stats. So an item might increase your damage output, your defense, how fast your ship sails. There's tons of stuff. And so adding the currency system and the shop system definitely felt more rewarding than before, but I still felt that the rewards were a bit too spread out. You got coins super consistently, but you had to go back to a shop to actually activate a reward. So I wanted to add something to the game that sprinkled the rewards a bit more. However, at this point, I still felt that there was one more thing missing, and that was a more layered reward system. So finally, I bit the bullet and added a leveling system for each individual monster that you can catch, and so at this point, the game is a true RPG. So how it works is that you get experience whenever you defeat monsters, and whenever you find these yellow resource nodes in the world, so that aspect as well also gives players more variety in terms of the kind of rewards that they can get for exploration. But the main benefit that the game got out of this edition was not only that the rewards were given to the player more often and for a wider range of activities, but it was the fact that the game now actually incentivized you to swap between different characters. One of my biggest issues with the original iteration of the game was that the only reason you would ever have to switch to specific monsters was for doing a puzzle that their ability would allow you to do. That's fine and all, but most players just swap back to the first character right after doing the puzzle, and that just resulted in really samey combat because the same character was being used all the time, and that's not the point of a monster taming RPG. So now that each individual character has a level progression, and even more importantly, that lower leveled characters level up more quickly, you're incentivized to swap around so that you can get more abilities for more characters more quickly. So for example, this is Psytech, one of the monsters that you can catch, and if you level it up to level 2, it will shoot a projectile when it attacks on top of using its melee attack. And then in level 3, its melee attack can destroy projectiles, and so on. It just gets more and more cool stuff. Each individual level is super impactful, and the lower levels can be obtained super quickly. So you are super incentivized to try different characters and see how they progress, especially early on. That was also the reason for why I only have 5 levels per character. I could have had more frequent levels, but then each level would have had to be less impactful. Or I could have had just as frequent levels, but maybe have 100 levels per character, but then you would feel obliged to kind of stick with the character that you've invested in, so that defeats the purpose of incentivizing you to switch around and try new things. So overall, I'm super happy with all these changes to Synth Beast. The game really feels like a full action RPG now, and because of that, I'm super happy to announce that we're actually going to do a Kickstarter for the game. The game's core development will be done in about 2 months or so you might be asking yourself, what's the need for the Kickstarter? And well, that's for 2 reasons. The first is that we're actually going to be simultaneously launching the game on Steam, PlayStation 4, PlayStation 5, Xbox One, Xbox Series S, Xbox Series X, Switch 1, and of course, Switch 2. And I'm super excited for that one. So the Kickstarter is in part to fund all those ports, all of which you'll be able to get if you back the Kickstarter. But the second reason is that I want to have the game be more shaped by the community. So this will be my 4th Kickstarter actually, and I just love it when players can back for tiers that allow them to leave their mark on the game. So SynthBeast Kickstarter will allow you to, for example, do things like make your own monster, make your own island, and way more. So stay tuned for that and follow the Kickstarter link in the description to know when it comes out. If you've enjoyed this devlog, make sure to wishlist SynthBeast on Steam as well, and as I mentioned earlier in the video, we recently released Soulstalker on Steam and all consoles, so check those links out in the descriptions as well if the game interests you. The game is a super cheap roguelike where you fight tons of enemies on screen, and it has this super nice Paper Mario inspired visuals that I'm super happy with, so if that interests you, check that out. So I'll see you all next time, and let me know what aspects of SynthBeast development you'd like to learn about more in the next devlog. Bye.